I didn't plan to embarrass a mafia boss at his own cousin's wedding. I was there to work. Nothing more. The Augustine Hotel had hired me 6 months ago as a junior event coordinator, and this wedding lavish, excessive, dripping with old money and older secrets, was supposed to be my chance to prove I could handle high-profile clients without flinching. I wore my most professional black dress, kept my hair pinned back, and carried my tablet like a shield. I checked floral arrangements, coordinated with the kitchen staff, ensured the string quartet had enough champagne. I was invisible. That was the goal. Until I heard him speak. The reception hall was all marble and gold, chandeliers throwing soft light across hundreds of guests in designer suits and silk gowns. I stood near the back, confirming the timing for the cake service, when a voice cut through the noise low, smooth, laced with something sharp. Sicilian. I'd grown up hearing it. My grandmother, Nonna Cecilia, had refused to speak anything else at home until I turned 12. She'd been born in Palermo, raised in a village where distrust of outsiders was taught before the alphabet. She'd made sure I understood every word, every inflection, every insult hidden beneath politeness. So when I heard the man say, "Chista, etropunica pi esiri sirai, talia com'u si comporta, com'u na picturera canun sapiuni si trova," I froze. This one's too small to be here. Look at her, acting like a little girl who doesn't know where she is. I turned slowly. He stood near the bar, surrounded by men in tailored black suits. He was taller than the rest, broader in the shoulders, with dark hair swept back and a face that would have been handsome if it weren't so cold. His eyes were pale gray or green, I couldn't tell from the distance, and they flicked over me with the kind of dismissiveness that made my stomach twist. He said something else, quieter this time, and the men around him laughed. My cheeks burned. I should have walked away. I should have let it go, but my Nana's voice echoed in my head. "Non ti lasciare mai calpestare, Giulia. Mai. Never let yourself be trampled, Giulia. Never." I crossed the room before I could think better of it. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady despite the hammering in my chest. "If you have concerns about the event staff, you're welcome to speak to my supervisor." He turned to me, one dark brow lifting. His expression didn't change. Still cool, still indifferent, but something flickered in his eyes. "I don't think you understood me," he said in English, his accent faint but unmistakable. "Capisco perfettamente," I replied. "I understand perfectly." The laughter around him died. His gaze sharpened, and for the first time, he looked at me. Really looked. Not through me. Really looked. Not past me. At me. "Siciliano?" he asked, his tone shifting into something unreadable. "Siciliano?" I confirmed, lifting my chin. "Nad, itsidedera?" And I'm not a little girl. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. One of the men beside him muttered something under his breath. Another shifted uncomfortably, but the man in the center, the one who'd mocked me, didn't move. He studied me the way someone might study a puzzle they hadn't expected to find. Then, slowly, he smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't kind. It was the smile of a predator who just found something interesting. "Kamuti Kayami?" he asked. "What's your name?" I hesitated. Something told me that answering him was a mistake, that this moment was a door I shouldn't walk through. But I'd already spoken. I'd already stepped into his line of sight. "Giulia," I said quietly. "Giulia," he repeated, testing the shape of it. Then he switched back to English. "You should be more careful, Giulia. Not everyone appreciates being corrected." Then maybe they shouldn't mock people in languages they assume no one else speaks. His smile widened, just slightly, and something cold slid down my spine. "Interessanti," he murmured. "Interesting." Before I could respond, my supervisor's voice cut through the tension. "Giulia, I need you in the kitchen now." I stepped back, my pulse racing, and forced myself to turn away. But I felt his gaze on me the entire walk across the room. I learned his name an hour later. "Do you have any idea who that was?" my supervisor hissed as we stood in the service hallway. Her face was pale, her hands shaking. "That was Dante Vitale." The name meant nothing to me. He's the head of the Vitali family, she continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. One of the most powerful families in the city. You don't talk back to men like him, Julia. You don't even look at them unless they tell you to. My stomach dropped. I didn't know. It doesn't matter what you knew. She pressed her fingers to her temples. Just stay out of his sight for the rest of the night, please. I nodded, my throat tight. But when I returned to the reception hall to oversee the cake service, I saw him again. He was standing near the entrance, speaking to an older man in a gray suit. His posture was relaxed, his hands in his pockets, but there was something about the way everyone around him moved carefully, respectfully, fearfully, that made my skin prickle. And then, as if he felt me watching, he turned his head. Our eyes met across the room. He didn't smile this time. He just looked at me, steady and unblinking, and I felt the weight of it like a hand around my throat. Then he turned back to his conversation, and I forced myself to breathe. I didn't see him again that night. But when I left the hotel at midnight, exhausted and rattled, I found a black car idling at the curb. The back window rolled down. Dante Vitale looked out at me, his expression unreadable. "Julia," he said quietly. "Get in." I froze. "I'm fine walking," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm not asking." The door opened, and I realized with a cold, creeping certainty that my life had just changed in a way I didn't yet understand. I didn't get in the car. Not at first. I stood there on the sidewalk, my bag clutched against my ribs, staring at the open door like it was a mouth waiting to swallow me whole. Dante Vitale watched me from the back seat, his expression calm, patient. Like he knew I'd either step inside or spend the rest of my life wondering what would have happened if I had. "I don't accept rides from strangers," I said, hating how thin my voice sounded. "We're not strangers anymore," he replied evenly. "You corrected me in my own language. That makes us acquainted. That makes us nothing." His gaze didn't waver. "Get in the car, Julia." "Why?" "Because I want to talk to you." "So talk from there." A faint smile touched his mouth, amused maybe, or irritated. I couldn't tell. "You're brave," he said quietly. "Or foolish. I haven't decided which. Maybe both. Maybe." He leaned back slightly, his hand resting on the edge of the seat. "If I wanted to hurt you, I wouldn't need to ask you to get in. I'd simply take you." The words should have terrified me. They did, but they also made something clear. He was giving me a choice. A twisted, dangerous choice, but a choice nonetheless. I thought of my supervisor's pale face, the way the men around him had gone silent, the weight of his name, Dante Vitale. I should have walked away. Instead, I got in. The car was cold. Leather seats, tinted windows, the faint smell of expensive cologne. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and suddenly, the noise of the street disappeared. It was just the two of us. Dante sat across from me, one arm draped casually along the back of the seat. He studied me the way someone might study a painting carefully, thoughtfully, like he was deciding whether it was worth keeping. "Where are we going?" I asked. "Nowhere yet." "Then why?" "I wanted to see if you'd get in." My hands tightened around my bag. "Why does that matter?" "Because most people don't." He tilted his head slightly. "Most people hear my name and do exactly what they're told. No questions. No hesitation. Maybe they're smarter than me. Maybe." The driver pulled away from the curb, smooth and silent, and I felt my pulse spike. "Where is he taking us?" "Relax, Julia." Dante's voice was soft, almost soothing. "I'm bringing you home. You don't know where I live." He didn't answer, and that was when I realized he already knew. We drove in silence for several minutes. I kept my gaze on the window, watching the city lights blur past, trying to calm the frantic beating of my heart. "Your grandmother," Dante said suddenly. "Where was she from?" I turned to him, surprised. "Why do you want to know?" "Your Sicilian is old. Proper, the kind that's taught at home, not in the classroom." I hesitated. "Palermo." "What part?" "A village outside the city. I don't remember the name." He nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something. And she taught you to speak back, he said, to stand your ground. She taught me not to let people disrespect me. Even dangerous people? She didn't make exceptions. A faint smile crossed his face, genuine this time, I thought. I would have liked her. She would have hated you. He laughed, low and quiet, and the sound sent a strange shiver through me. Probably, he agreed. The car slowed and I realized we were on my street. My small, unremarkable street lined with old apartment buildings and corner stores that stayed open too late. The driver stopped in front of my building. I stared at Dante, my throat tight. How did you— I know a lot of things, Julia. He leaned forward slightly, his elbows resting on his knees, his gaze steady on mine. Your name, where you live, where you work, how long you've been in the city. That's necessary, he interrupted gently. You embarrassed me in front of my men. I needed to know who you were. And now you do. Now I do. I reached for the door handle, but his voice stopped me. One more thing. I looked back at him. You're going to see me again, he said quietly. Soon. Why? Because I haven't decided what to do with you yet. The words hung in the air, cold and certain. I swallowed hard. I'm not yours to do anything with. Not yet. I pushed the door open and stepped out into the cold night air, my legs shaking. But before I could close the door, he spoke again. Stati accura, Julia. Be careful, Julia. The door closed, and the car pulled away, disappearing into the darkness. I stood there for a long time, staring after it, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. The roses arrived 3 days later, 24 of them, deep red, arranged in a crystal vase that probably cost more than my rent. They were waiting on my desk when I arrived at work. Petals perfect, thorns carefully trimmed. No card, no note, just roses. Someone has an admirer, my coworker teased, leaning over my cubicle divider. Who's the guy? I don't know, I lied. But I did know. I knew exactly who they were from. I tried to ignore them. I focused on work, coordinating events, managing schedules, answering emails. I told myself that Dante Vitale was just a man with too much power and too much time, and that he'd lose interest once he realized I wasn't interesting. But the roses kept coming. Every 3 days, a new arrangement appeared. My apartment. My desk. Once, sitting on the hood of my car in the parking garage, the vase somehow unbroken despite the freezing temperature, never with a card, never with an explanation, just roses. And the unspoken message beneath them, I know where you are. By the second week, my supervisor pulled me aside. Julia, she said carefully, her voice low, I don't know what's going on, but you need to be careful. I am being careful. No, she glanced toward the roses on my desk. You don't understand. Men like Dante Vitale don't send flowers because they're nice. They send them because they want something. I haven't done anything. It doesn't matter what you've done. Her hand tightened on my arm. It matters what he thinks you've done, or what he wants you to do. I pulled away gently. I'm fine, Julia, I'm fine. But I wasn't. The third week, the roses stopped. I told myself I was relieved. I told myself I was glad. But when I came home to my apartment that Friday night, exhausted and cold, I found something else waiting for me. A book. It sat on my doorstep, wrapped in brown paper, tied with black string. My hands shook as I picked it up. Inside was a collection of Sicilian poetry, old, leather-bound, the kind of book you'd find in an estate sale or a forgotten library. And on the first page, written in black ink, Pa quando si stancassi di fare finta che non mi pensi. For when you get tired of pretending you don't think of me. No signature. But I knew. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with the book in my lap, staring at the inscription, my mind racing. He was watching me. He knew where I lived, where I worked, what I did, and instead of feeling afraid, I felt something else. Something I didn't want to name. The next morning, I decided to confront him. I didn't know where he lived, but I knew where his family did business, a restaurant in the old district, Upscale, exclusive, the kind of place where you needed a reservation months in advance. I walked in without one. The maître d' tried to stop me, but I pushed past him, ignoring his protests, my heart pounding. And there, in a private booth near the back, I saw him. Dante Vitale. He was alone, reading something on his phone, a glass of wine untouched in front of him. He looked up as I approached, and his expression didn't change, didn't surprise, didn't harden. He just looked at me, like he'd been expecting me. "Julia," he said quietly, "sit." I don't want to sit, then stand. I crossed my arms, trying to steady my breathing. "You need to stop." Stop what? The flowers. The book. All of it. He set his phone down, his gaze never leaving mine. "Why?" "Because it's," I fumbled for the word, "it's invasive." "Is it?" "Yes." He leaned back, studying me. "You came all the way here to tell me that?" "Yes." "Then you're thinking about me." I froze. "If you weren't," he continued, his voice soft, "you would have thrown the roses away. You would have ignored the book. But you didn't. You kept them. And now you're here. I'm here to tell you to leave me alone." "No," he said gently. "You're here because you want to know why I'm not." The truth of it hit me like a slap. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Dante stood slowly, and suddenly the space between us felt impossibly small. "You're afraid of me," he said quietly, "but not for the reason you think. I'm not afraid of you." "Yes, you are." He stepped closer, and I forced myself not to move. "You're afraid because you don't understand why I matter to you, why you haven't told anyone, why you haven't run." You're afraid," he continued, his voice dropping, "because part of you wants to stay." I stared at him, my chest tight, my pulse racing. "You don't know me," I whispered. "Not yet." He reached out slowly, and I felt his fingers brush against my wrist, barely a touch, but it burned. "Va via, Julia," he murmured. "Go, Julia," he murmured. "Go, Julia." "What?" "If you want me to stop, leave now, don't come back, forget my name." I didn't move. "But if you stay," he said quietly, his gaze locked on mine, "then you're choosing this. You're choosing me." I should have left. I should have walked out of that restaurant and never looked back. But I didn't. I stood there trembling, and I didn't move. And Dante Vitale smiled. I sat down. I didn't mean to. My legs simply gave out, folding beneath me as I sank into the leather booth across from him. My hands were shaking, so I pressed them flat against the table, trying to anchor myself. Dante watched me, his expression unreadable. "Wine?" he asked. "I don't drink." "Coffee, then." He gestured to someone I hadn't noticed. A server, silent and efficient, who appeared at the table within seconds. Dante murmured something in Italian and the man disappeared. We sat in silence. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I was doing here. "You're angry," Dante said finally. I'm confused. "About?" "All of it." I looked at him, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "Why me?" "You don't know me." "I'm nobody." "You're not nobody." "You're not nobody." "I work in event planning. I rent a studio apartment. I take the bus to work." My voice cracked slightly. "I'm nobody to someone like you." Dante leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, his gaze steady. "You stood in a room full of dangerous men," he said quietly, "and you didn't flinch. You heard me insult you, and instead of shrinking, you answered back. In my language, without hesitation. That doesn't. Most people spend their entire lives trying not to be seen by men like me," he continued. "You walked straight toward me. You made yourself visible. Do you understand how rare that is?" I swallowed hard. Maybe I was just stupid. Maybe. A faint smile touched his mouth. But I don't think so. The server returned with a silver tray espresso for me, another glass of wine for him. I wrapped my hands around the small cup, grateful for the warmth. "I didn't ask for this," I said quietly. "I know." "Then why are you doing it?" He was silent for a long moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his glass. "Because I want to," he said finally. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have." I stared at him, searching his face for something: guilt, amusement, cruelty. But all I saw was calm certainty. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I don't know yet. That's not reassuring." "I'm not trying to reassure you." He lifted his glass, his gaze never leaving mine. "I'm trying to be honest." We talked for an hour, or rather, he asked questions, and I answered. Where I grew up, how I learned Sicilian, why I came to the city, what I wanted. I tried to ask him questions in return, but he deflected them smoothly, turning the conversation back to me with the skill of someone who'd spent a lifetime avoiding scrutiny. "You're good at this," I said finally. "At what?" "Making people feel like they matter." He tilted his head slightly. "You think I'm pretending?" "I think you're practiced." "Maybe." He set his glass down. "Or maybe I'm just interested." "In me?" "Yes." The word hung between us, simple and heavy. I looked away, my cheeks burning. "I should go," I said, reaching for my bag. "Not yet. Dante, stay." His voice was quiet but firm. "Please," I froze, my hand on the strap of my bag. He'd said please. I didn't know why that mattered, but it did. I sat back slowly and he nodded, satisfied. "I need you to understand something," he said after a moment. "What?" "The world I live in, it's not kind, it's not safe. And once you're part of it, even at the edges, you can't simply walk away." "I'm not part of it." "You are, now." His gaze was steady, unflinching. "The moment you spoke to me, you became visible. And in my world, visibility is dangerous. Then let me disappear." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because others have seen you with me." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "At the wedding." "Here, they'll assume you're important to me." "I'm not. It doesn't matter what's true," he interrupted gently. "It matters what they believe." A chill slid down my spine. "So what does that mean?" "It means I can't let you go. Not yet." He paused. "Not until I'm sure you're safe." "Safe from who?" "From everyone." I stared at him, my pulse racing. "You're saying I'm in danger because I talk to you?" "Yes." "That's insane. That's my life." I stood abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this." "I know." "Then fix it." "I'm trying. By sending me flowers?" My voice rose. "By watching me? By dragging me into something I don't understand?" Dante stood as well, and suddenly the space between us felt suffocating. "I'm protecting you," he said quietly. "I don't need your protection." "Yes, you do." His gaze was hard now, unyielding. "You just don't know it yet." I turned to leave, but his hand closed around my wrist. Not rough, but firm enough to stop me. "Julia." I looked back at him, my breath catching. "I know this is frightening," he said, his voice softer now. "I know you didn't choose this, but I'm asking you to trust me. I don't even know you. Then let me show you." I pulled my wrist free, my heart pounding. "I need to think." "All right, alone." He nodded slowly. "I'll take you home. I can take the bus." "No," he said firmly. "You can't." And the way he said it, calm, absolute, made me realize he wasn't asking. The drive back to my apartment was silent. I sat as far from him as the back seat would allow, my arms crossed, my gaze fixed on the window. But I felt him watching me. When we stopped in front of my building, I reached for the door handle, but his voice stopped me. "Julia." I didn't turn around. "I meant what I said," he continued quietly. "I'm trying to keep you safe, but I can only do that if you let me. I don't need a bodyguard." "You need more than that." He paused, "and whether you believe it or not, I'm the only one who can give it to you." I didn't answer. I stepped out of the car and walked into my building without looking back. But as I climbed the stairs to my apartment, my hands still shaking, I knew one thing for certain. He was right. I was already part of his world. And I had no idea how to escape. I didn't see Dante for 5 days. No roses, no books, no calls. I told myself I was relieved. I told myself I could go back to normal, my quiet, unremarkable life where dangerous men didn't know my name or where I lived. But normal didn't feel normal anymore. I checked over my shoulder when I walked to my car. I hesitated before unlocking my apartment door. I scanned every face in the coffee shop, the grocery store, the hotel lobby, looking for someone watching me. And I hated that I noticed his absence. On the 6th day, something changed. I was leaving work late past midnight, the hotel lobby empty except for the night staff. I'd stayed to finalize the details for an anniversary gala, and by the time I finished, the parking garage was almost deserted. My car was on the 3rd level, parked near the back where the lighting was dim and flickering. I walked quickly, my keys clutched between my fingers, my breath fogging in the cold air, and then I heard footsteps behind me. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. My pulse spiked. I turned slowly, scanning the rows of cars, but saw nothing. Just shadows and concrete and the faint hum of the overhead lights. "Hello?" I called, my voice thin. No answer. I turned back toward my car, walking faster now, my heart hammering. The footsteps started again. Closer this time. I broke into a run. I didn't make it 10 feet before a hand closed around my arm, yanking me backward. I screamed, twisting, trying to pull free, but the grip was iron tight. "Shut up," a voice hissed, male, rough, unfamiliar. I drove my elbow back, connecting with something solid, and the man grunted. His grip loosened and I wrenched free, stumbling forward. But there were 2 of them. The second man stepped out from behind a van, blocking my path. He was larger than the first, his face hidden beneath a hood, his hands empty but ready. "We just want to talk," the first man said, his voice mockingly calm. "Stay away from me," I gasped, backing toward the wall. "You've been spending time with Dante Vitale," the second man said. "We need to know why." "I don't. Don't lie." The first man stepped closer. "We've seen you with him. At the restaurant. In his car." "I'm not." My voice cracked. "I'm nothing to him." "Then you won't mind coming with us." They moved toward me, and I realized with cold, sick certainty that I wasn't going to escape. And then the lights went out. The garage plunged into darkness. I heard a shout, confusion, anger, and then the sharp crack of something heavy hitting flesh. A body hit the ground. Another shout, cut off abruptly. And then silence. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath coming in short, desperate gasps, unable to see anything. "Julia." His voice was low, calm, familiar. "Dante." I sagged with relief. The lights flickered back on, dim and stuttering, and I saw him standing in the center of the garage. The 2 men were on the ground, one unconscious, the other groaning, clutching his ribs. Dante stood over them, his hands relaxed at his sides, his suit jacket gone, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He looked at me, his expression hard. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, unable to speak. He crossed the distance between us in 3 strides, his hands framing my face, his gaze searching mine. "Did they touch you?" My voice broke. One of them grabbed me, but His jaw tightened. And for a moment, I saw something cold and terrifying flicker in his eyes. He turned back to the men on the ground. "Chi vai mana?" he demanded. "Who sent you?" The conscious man spat blood onto the concrete. "Ve fanculo." Dante's expression didn't change. He crouched down, his movement slow and deliberate, and gripped the man's jaw. "I'll ask once more," he said quietly. "Chi vai mana?" The man hesitated, fear flickering across his face. "Salvatore," he gasped finally. "Salvatore Russo." Dante released him, standing slowly. "Piggy Attili," he said to someone behind me. "Take them." I turned and saw 2 men in dark suits step out of the shadows. They hauled the attackers to their feet and dragged them toward the exit without a word. And then it was just Dante and me. He turned back to me, his expression softening slightly. "You're coming with me," he said. "I'm fine." "You're not." He took my hand, gently but firmly, "and you're not staying here." "Dante, I can't just—" "Julia." His voice was quiet, but there was no room for argument. "Please." I stared at him, my mind racing. my body still trembling, and then I nodded. He drove me to a house on the outskirts of the city, modern, sprawling, surrounded by high walls and iron gates. I didn't ask whose it was. I already knew. Inside, the house was all clean lines and expensive furniture, but it felt cold. Empty. Dante led me to a sitting room near the back, where a fire burned in a stone fireplace. He gestured for me to sit, and I sank onto the couch, my legs shaking. He poured something amber into a glass and handed it to me. Drink. I told you I don't. Drink it anyway. I took a sip and the burn of it steadied me slightly. Dante sat across from me, leaning forward, his elbows on his knees. Who's Salvatore Russo? I asked quietly. A rival. Why does he care about me? Because he thinks you matter to me. Do I? He was silent for a long moment, his gaze steady on mine. Yes, he said finally. The word hit me like a fist. Why? I whispered. I don't know. He ran a hand through his hair, and for the first time, I saw something like frustration in his expression. I didn't plan this, Julia. I didn't plan you. Then let me go. I can't. His voice was rough now. If I let you go, Salvatore will assume you're no longer under my protection, and he'll come for you again. So what am I supposed to do? Stay here. Here? Yes. I stared at him. For how long? As long as it takes? That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. I set the glass down, my hands shaking. You're asking me to trust you. Yes. Why should I? He leaned back, his gaze never leaving mine. Because if you don't, you'll die. The bluntness of it stole my breath. And if I do, I asked quietly, then I'll keep you alive. I looked at him, at the sharp lines of his face, the cold certainty in his eyes, the tension coiled beneath his calm exterior, and I realized I didn't have a choice. Not really. All right, I whispered. Dante nodded slowly. I'll have someone bring your things in the morning, he said. For now, get some rest. Where will you be? Close. He stood and crossed to the door, but I stopped him. Dante. He turned. Thank you, I said quietly. For tonight. His expression softened, just slightly. Non te lascio sola, Julia, he said. I won't leave you alone, Julia. And then he was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the guest room Dante had shown me, spacious, impersonal, smelling faintly of lavender, and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt hands grabbing me, heard voices threatening me, saw the cold efficiency with which Dante had dismantled two men without breaking a sweat. He'd called it protection. It felt like captivity. By the time the sun rose, I was exhausted and restless. I found my way downstairs, following the smell of coffee, and discovered a kitchen that looked like something out of a design magazine. Marble countertops, stainless steel appliances, windows overlooking a sprawling garden. A woman stood at the stove, middle-aged, her dark hair pulled into a neat bun. She looked up as I entered and smiled. Buongiorno, she said warmly. Julia Vero? I nodded. I'm Rosa. I keep the house. She gestured to the table. Sit. I'll bring you breakfast. I can sit, she repeated, her tone gentle but firm. I sat. She brought me espresso, fresh bread, fruit, and cheese, all arranged on delicate porcelain. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, my thoughts elsewhere. He's in the garden, Rosa said, as if reading my mind. I looked up. Dante, see, she smiled. He doesn't sleep much either. I found him near the back of the property, standing in a garden that shouldn't have existed in late autumn. Roses climbed the stone walls, their petals deep red even in the cold. Herb beds lined the paths, their scents sharp and clean. A fountain stood at the center, water trickling softly. Dante stood beside it, his hands in his pockets, his gaze distant. He turned as I approached, and something in his expression shifted, softened. You're awake, he said. I couldn't sleep. Neither could I. We stood in silence for a moment, the only sound the fountain and the distant hum of the city beyond the walls. This is beautiful, I said finally. My mother planted it. His voice was quiet. Before she died. I looked at him surprised. He'd never mentioned his mother before. She loved roses, he continued, said they were the only beautiful thing in an ugly world. Do you believe that? He was silent for a long moment. I used to, he said finally. We walked through the garden together, and for the first time, he didn't feel like a stranger. He told me about his mother, how she died when he was 16, how his father had hardened after her death, how he'd been groomed to take over the family business before he understood what it truly meant. I didn't want this life, he said quietly. Not at first. What changed? I realized I didn't have a choice. He glanced at me. The moment I was born, my path was set. I could either accept it or destroy my family trying to escape. So you accepted it. Yes. Do you regret it? He stopped walking, his gaze distant. Every day. The honesty of it startled me. Then why not leave? Because leaving doesn't erase what I've done. He turned to me, his expression hard. I've hurt people, Julia. I've killed people. I've made choices that most people couldn't live with. Then why tell me? Because you should know who I am. His voice was rough now. You should know what you're involved in. I stared at him, my chest tight. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to be honest. Why? Because you deserve it. The words hung between us, raw and unguarded. I looked away, my throat tight. I don't understand you. Good. He stepped closer, and I felt the heat of him. If you understood me, you'd run. Maybe I should anyway. Maybe. His hand lifted, and I felt his fingers brush against my cheek, barely a touch. But it burned. But you won't. How do you know? 'Cause you're still here. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to tell him he was wrong. But I couldn't, because he wasn't. I need to ask you something, I said quietly. All right, the men last night, what will happen to them? Dante's expression didn't change. They'll be dealt with. That's not an answer. Yes, it is. Dante, they tried to hurt you, Julia. His voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. Did you think I'd let that go? I don't want anyone to die because of me. They won't die because of you, he said. They'll die because they made a choice. They knew the consequences. And that makes it okay? No. He stepped closer. But it makes it necessary. I turned away, my stomach twisting. I can't do this, I whispered. Do what? Live in a world where people die because they looked at me the wrong way? You already do. His voice was quiet. You just didn't know it. I looked back at him, and the truth of it settled over me like a weight. He was right. I'd already crossed a line I couldn't uncross. I'm afraid, I said finally. Of me? Of this? I gestured around us. Of what it means. Of what I'm becoming. You're not becoming anything, he said gently. You're just seeing the world as it is. And what if I don't want to see it? Then close your eyes. He reached out, his hand cupping my cheek, his thumb brushing against my skin. But don't ask me to let you go, because I won't. I stared at him, my breath catching. Why? Because I don't want to. That's not a reason, it's the only one that matters. His gaze dropped to my mouth, and I felt my pulse spike. Dante. Tell me to stop, he murmured. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Tell me you don't feel this, he continued, his voice low. Tell me I'm wrong. I couldn't. Because he wasn't. I felt it. The pull. The gravity of him. The terrifying certainty that I was falling towards something I couldn't control. I can't, I whispered. His hand slid to the back of my neck, his fingers threading through my hair. Then don't. And he kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was desperate and fierce and full of something I couldn't name. I gasped against his mouth, my hands gripping his shirt, and he pulled me closer, his other arm wrapping around my waist, holding me like I might disappear. And for a moment, I let myself fall. I let myself forget the danger, the fear, the impossibility of it all. I let myself feel. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. Julia, he murmured, his forehead resting against mine. Non sa che ci fare, cutia. I don't know what to do with you. I didn't answer. I didn't know either, but as I stood there in his arms, surrounded by roses and silence, I realized something terrifying. I didn't want to leave. Dante stepped back first. His hands fell away from me slowly, reluctantly, and the cold air rushed in to fill the space where his warmth had been. I shouldn't have done that, he said quietly. Why not? Because you're not ready. How do you know? He looked at me, his expression unreadable. Because you're trembling. I realized he was right. My hands were shaking. My breath was uneven. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. I'm not afraid of you, I said. I know. His voice was soft. You're afraid of yourself. The truth of it stole my breath. I spent the rest of the day avoiding him. Rosa showed me around the house, the library, the sitting rooms, the sprawling kitchen. She talked about Dante's mother, about the family, about the garden, and the meals she used to cook. But I barely heard her. All I could think about was the kiss, the way his hands had felt against my skin, the way his voice had dropped when he'd said my name, the way I'd needed him to keep touching me. It terrified me. That night, I couldn't sleep again. I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Around midnight, I gave up. I pulled on a sweater and padded downstairs, thinking I'd make tea, read a book, anything to quiet the noise in my head. But when I reached the kitchen, I found Dante sitting at the table. He was still dressed, though his shirt was untucked, his sleeves rolled up. A glass of whiskey sat in front of him, mostly full. He looked up as I entered, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Can't sleep, he asked finally. No, neither can I. I crossed to the counter and filled the kettle, just to have something to do with my hands. You don't have to avoid me, he said quietly. I'm not avoiding you. Yes, you are. I turned to face him. What do you want me to say? Nothing. He leaned back in his chair. I just don't want you to be afraid of me. I told you I'm not. Then why won't you look at me? I forced myself to meet his gaze, and the intensity of it made my breath catch. I don't know what this is, I said quietly. I don't know what you want from me. I want you to stop pretending you don't feel this. I'm not pretending. Yes, you are. He stood, crossing the kitchen slowly. You felt it the night you got in my car. You felt it at the restaurant. You felt it this morning in the garden. Dante, tell me I'm wrong, he said, stopping in front of me. Tell me you don't think about me. I opened my mouth, but no words came. Tell me you don't want this, he continued, his voice dropping. And I'll walk away. I stared at him, my pulse racing. I can't, I whispered. Why not? Because it's not that simple. Yes, it is. No. I shook my head. You're asking me to choose something I don't understand. You're asking me to trust you when I barely know you. You're asking me to what? To give you something I can't take back. His expression softened, and he reached out, his hand cupping my cheek. I know, he said quietly, and I'm not asking lightly. Then why are you asking at all? Because I don't want to lose you. The rawness in his voice made my chest ache. You barely know me, I whispered. I know enough. How? Because you're still here. His thumb brushed against my cheek. You could have run a dozen times. You could have told me to leave you alone. But you didn't. That doesn't mean it means everything. He leaned closer, and I felt his breath against my lips. Tell me to stop, he murmured. Tell me you don't want this. I couldn't, because I did want it. I wanted him, and that terrified me more than anything. This time, when he kissed me, it was different. Slower, deeper, like he was memorizing the shape of me. I gasped against his mouth, and his hands slid to my waist, pulling me closer. I gripped his shirt, my fingers twisting in the fabric, and he made a low sound in his throat that sent heat flooding through me. Julia, he whispered against my lips. Dimmi cavua cistu. Tell me you want this. My voice broke. I don't know what I want. Yes, you do. His hands moved to my hips, lifting me onto the counter, and I gasped, my legs parting instinctively to make room for him. He stepped between them, his hands framing my face, his gaze locked on mine. I won't hurt you, he said quietly. You can't promise that. I can. His forehead rested against mine. I won't let anyone touch you, not Salvatore, not anyone. And what about you? What about me? Will you hurt me? He was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he said finally, his voice rough, but I'll try not to. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was honest. And somehow, that was enough. He carried me upstairs. I didn't protest, I didn't speak. I just buried my face in his neck and let him take me to his room larger than the guest room, darker, smelling of cedar and something faintly spiced. He set me down gently, his hands lingering on my waist. If you want to stop, he said quietly, tell me. I'll walk you back to your room. No questions. And if I don't want to stop? His gaze darkened. Allora restiamo si sa. Then we stay here. I looked at him, at the sharp lines of his face, the tension coiled in his shoulders, the way he was holding himself back, waiting for me to decide. And I realized I'd already decided. Days ago, maybe weeks ago, maybe the moment I'd answered him in Sicilian. I don't want to stop, I whispered. He undressed me slowly, reverently, like I was something precious. Every touch was careful, every kiss was soft. He murmured to me in Sicilian words. I barely understood. Words that felt like promises, and when he finally moved over me, his weight settling between my thighs, I felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not doubt, just surrender. Stati tranquilla, he whispered. Stay calm. I nodded, my hands gripping his shoulders, and he kissed me again, deep and slow and impossibly gentle. And then he was inside me, and I gasped, my nails digging into his back. He stilled immediately, his gaze searching mine. Are you all right? I nodded, unable to speak. Giulia. Don't stop, I whispered, and he didn't. Afterward, we lay tangled together, his arm around my waist, my head on his chest. I could hear his heartbeat steady, strong, impossibly calm. Are you all right? He asked quietly. I think so. You think so? I smiled faintly. I don't know. I've never done this before. He went still. Never? I shook my head. He was silent for a long moment, and then he pulled me closer, his lips brushing against my forehead. Crazy, he murmured. For what? For trusting me? I didn't answer, because I wasn't sure if I did, but I knew I wanted to. I woke to an empty bed. The sheets beside me were cold, the indentation where Dante had been barely visible. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and gray. I sat up slowly, my body aching in unfamiliar ways, and pulled the blanket around me. The house was silent. Too silent. I found Rosa in the kitchen, her expression tight. Where's Dante? I asked. He left early. She didn't meet my eyes. He'll be back soon. Where did he go? Lavoro, she said quietly. Work. Lavoro, she said quietly. But the way she said it made my stomach twist. He came back 3 hours later. I was in the library pretending to read when I heard the front door open and close. I set the book aside and went downstairs. Dante stood in the foyer, his back to me, his jacket draped over one arm, and his hands were covered in blood. I froze, my breath catching. He turned slowly, and when he saw me, his expression didn't change. Go upstairs, he said quietly. What happened? Giulia, what happened? He was silent for a long moment, his gaze steady on mine. I dealt with Salvatore, he said finally. The words hung in the air, cold and final. What does that mean? It means he won't come for you again. Dante, I'm not discussing this. You don't get to decide that. Yes, I do. His voice was hard now. You wanted to be safe. I made you safe. By killing him? He didn't answer. And that was answer enough. I turned and walked away, my hand shaking. He followed me. Giulia, wait. Don't. I spun to face him. Don't tell me this is normal. Don't tell me it's necessary. It is necessary. He stepped closer, and I saw something raw in his eyes. He sent men to hurt you. He would have kept sending them. I couldn't let that happen. So you killed him? Yes. And that's supposed to make me feel safe? It's supposed to keep you alive? I stared at him, my chest tight. I can't do this, I whispered. Yes, you can. No. I shook my head. I can't be with someone who what, he interrupted. Who protects you? Who makes sure you don't end up in a ditch somewhere because a rival decided you were a weakness? Who kills people? I've always killed people, Julia. His voice was quiet now, almost gentle. Last night didn't change that. It just made you see it. I turned away, my throat tight. I need time, I said. You don't have time. Dante, there are others like Salvatore, he continued, men who will see you as a target, and if I'm not here, if you leave, they'll come for you. Then let them. No. The finality of it made me flinch. You don't own me, I said quietly. I know. He stepped closer, and I felt his hand on my shoulder. But I'm not letting you go. I spent the rest of the day alone. I couldn't look at him. Couldn't bear the weight of what he'd done. For me. Because of me. That night, I stood in the garden, staring at the roses. They were beautiful, perfect, even in the cold. But all I could think about was the blood on his hands. Julia. I turned. Dante stood at the edge of the garden, his hands in his pockets, his expression unreadable. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For what? For frightening you? You didn't frighten me. Yes, I did. I looked away. I don't know how to do this. Do what? Love someone who's capable of. I stopped, unable to finish. Killing? I nodded. He crossed the garden slowly, stopping in front of me. I don't expect you to, he said quietly. I don't expect you to understand it, or accept it. I just need you to believe one thing. What? That I would do anything to keep you safe. His hand lifted, and I felt his fingers brush against my cheek. Anything, Julia, even if it costs me everything. I stared at him, my chest aching. I don't want it to cost you anything, I whispered. It already has. What do you mean? He was silent for a long moment. I was supposed to marry someone else, he said finally. A woman from another family. It was arranged years ago. My stomach dropped. What? I broke the engagement 3 days ago. Why? Because of you. The words hit me like a blow. Dante, I told them I wouldn't go through with it, he continued. That I'd found someone else. You shouldn't have done that. I know. You've put yourself in danger. I know. Then why? Because I don't want her. His gaze was fierce now, unyielding. I want you. I stared at him, unable to speak. I know it's selfish, he said quietly. I know I'm asking too much. But I can't let you go, even if it destroys you. Even then. I kissed him. I didn't mean to. I didn't plan it. But I couldn't stand the distance between us anymore. He made a low sound against my mouth, his arms wrapping around me, pulling me closer. Julia, he murmured. Tai Vogue you. I want you. I know, I whispered. Nun tai lasari. Don't leave me. I won't. He lifted me into his arms and I buried my face in his neck, breathing him in, and as he carried me back to the house, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I was afraid of how much I needed him. The next morning, everything changed. I woke to the sound of shouting downstairs, loud, angry, in rapid Italian I couldn't quite follow. I dressed quickly and hurried down. Dante stood in the foyer, facing 3 men in dark suits. His posture was tense, his jaw tight, and even from the stairs I could feel the danger in the air. One of the men saw me and sneered. Chista et? This is her? Dante's hand shot out, grabbing the man by the collar. Attento, he said quietly. Careful. The man raised his hands, stepping back. We're not here to hurt her, another man said, his voice smoother. We're here to talk. About what? About the mess you've made. Dante's expression didn't change, but I saw his shoulders tighten. "Get upstairs," he said to me without looking. "No." He turned, his gaze sharp. "Julia, I'm not leaving. This doesn't concern you. It does if it's about me." The smooth-voiced man smiled. "She's bold. I see why you like her." Dante's jaw clenched. "Say what you came to say, Luca." Luca gestured around the room. "You broke your engagement. You killed Salvatore. You've made an enemy of his family. All for a woman who's not even part of our world. She is now, is she?" Luca's gaze slid to me. "Does she understand what that means? The danger? The obligations? She understands enough. Does she understand that staying with you could get her killed?" "Yes," I said before Dante could answer. Luca looked at me, surprised. "I understand," I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I understand that being with him is dangerous, that people like you see me as a weakness, that I'm a target, and yet you're still here. Yes. Why?" I looked at Dante and his gaze softened. "Because I choose to be," I said quietly. Luca studied me for a long moment, then laughed low and humorless. "You're either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both." He shook his head. "Dante, I hope you know what you're doing." "I do." "Then you'd better be ready for the consequences." Luca turned toward the door and the other men followed. "Salvatore's brothers are already moving. They'll come for her, and when they do, you'd better hope you're strong enough to stop them." The door closed behind them, and the silence that followed felt suffocating. Dante turned to me, his expression hard. "You shouldn't have come down. They were talking about me." "That doesn't mean I'm not hiding anymore, Dante." I crossed my arms. "If I'm going to be part of your world, I need to know what's happening. You're not part of my world." "Yes, I am." I stepped closer. "You made me part of it the moment you decided I mattered." He stared at me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. "I'm trying to protect you," he said quietly. "I know." "Then let me." "I am." I reached for his hand and he let me take it. "But I need you to let me protect myself too." "How?" "By telling me the truth. All of it." He was silent for a long moment, then nodded. "All right." We sat in the library and he told me everything. About Salvatore's brothers, 3 of them, each more dangerous than the last. About the alliances shifting in the city, the families choosing sides, the quiet war brewing beneath the surface. About the woman he'd been engaged to, Alessandra, daughter of a powerful family in Naples, and the fury her father had unleashed when Dante broke the contract. "He's called for a meeting," Dante said. "In 3 days. He wants me to explain myself." "What will you tell him? The truth? That you chose me over his daughter?" "Yes." I stared at him. "That's going to start a war, I know. And you're willing to risk that?" "Yes." "Why?" He looked at me, his gaze steady. "Because you're worth it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Dante, listening to his breathing, my mind racing. He'd broken an engagement for me. He'd killed a man for me. He'd put himself and his entire family in danger. For me. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to carry that weight. The next morning, I made a decision. I found Dante in his study, reviewing documents, his expression focused. "I want to meet them," I said. He looked up. "Who?" "Salvatore's brothers, Alessandra's father, all of them." "No." "Dante, absolutely not." "Why?" "Because it's too dangerous." "Everything is dangerous," I said, "but if I'm going to survive this, I need to stop being invisible. I need them to see me as more than just a weakness." "You're not a weakness." "Then let me prove it." He stared at me, his jaw tight. "If something happens to you, it won't. You can't know that. Neither can you." I crossed the room and took his hand. "But I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you what I'm going to do." He was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right." The meeting was held in a private dining room at an upscale restaurant, the kind of place where deals were made and lives were decided over wine and pasta. I wore a simple black dress, my hair pulled back, No jewelry except the thin gold chain my grandmother had given me. Dante walked beside me, his hand resting lightly on my lower back, his presence a constant, grounding weight. "Remember," he said quietly as we approached the door. "Say as little as possible. Let me handle this, all right. And if anything happens, it won't." He looked at me, his expression unreadable, then pushed the door open. Inside, 5 men sat around a long table. I recognized Luca immediately. The others I didn't know, except for the man at the head of the table. He was older, gray-haired, with sharp eyes and a face carved from stone. Alessandra's father. "Dante," he said, his voice cold. "You're late. My apologies, Don Ricci." Don Ricci's gaze slid to me. "And this is the woman." "Her name is Giulia," Dante said evenly. "I know her name." Don Ricci gestured to the empty chairs. "Sit." We sat. The silence that followed was suffocating. "You broke your word," Don Ricci said finally, his gaze locked on Dante. "You dishonored my daughter. And for what? A girl with no family, no connections, no power." "She has me," Dante said quietly. "Is that supposed to be enough?" "Yes." Don Ricci laughed cold and humorless. "You're a fool, Dante. You've thrown away an alliance that could have secured your family's future. And for what? Love? Yes, love is a weakness. No, I said before I could stop myself. It's not." Every head turned toward me. Dante's hand tightened on mine. A silent warning, but I didn't look away from Don Ricci. "Love makes you vulnerable," Don Ricci said. "It makes you reckless. It also makes you stronger," I replied. "It gives you something to fight for, something worth protecting." "And you think you're worth protecting?" "I think Dante does." Don Ricci studied me, his expression unreadable. "You have courage," he said finally. "I'll give you that." "Thank you, but courage won't keep you alive." "Maybe not." I lifted my chin, but neither will fear. A faint smile touched his mouth. "You're not what I expected." "Good." He leaned back, his gaze shifting to Dante. "She's sharp. I see why you're willing to risk everything." "Then you'll accept this," Dante said. "No." The word hung in the air like a blade. "But," Don Ricci continued, "I won't start a war over it. Not yet. What do you want?" "Compensation. For the insult to my daughter. Name it." Don Ricci named a sum that made my stomach drop. Dante didn't hesitate. "Done." The meeting ended an hour later and we left the restaurant in silence. But as we reached the car, Dante stopped and turned to me. "You shouldn't have spoken," he said. "I know. You could have made things worse." "I know. But you didn't." He cupped my face, his gaze fierce. "You made them see you. Is that a good thing?" "Yes." He kissed me, slow and deep and full of something I couldn't name. "Ti amo," he murmured against my lips. "I love you." I stared at him, my breath catching. "You don't have to say it back," he continued. "I just needed you to know." "Dante, I mean it, Giulia. I love you, and I'm not letting you go." I kissed him again, my hands gripping his shirt, and whispered, "I love you too." 3 months later. The war Don Ricci had threatened never came. Salvatore's brothers made one attempt, a single, failed attack that ended with 2 of them dead and the 3rd fleeing the city. Dante's family accepted me slowly, reluctantly. But they accepted me, and I learned to live in his world. It wasn't easy, it wasn't safe, but it was mine. I stood in the garden, surrounded by roses, watching the sun set over the city. Dante came up behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. "Regret it yet?" he murmured. "Every day." He laughed, soft and warm. "Liar." I turned in his arms, my hands resting on his chest. "I love you," I said. "I know, even though you're dangerous." "Because I'm dangerous." I smiled. "Maybe." He kissed me slow and sweet, and I felt the weight of the past months settle into something softer. Not gone. Not forgotten. but bearable, and in the distance, beyond the walls and the roses and the fading light, the city hummed with life dangerous, unpredictable, unforgiving. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because I wasn't afraid anymore. Because I wasn't alone.